to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll start the meeting with any public comment on agenda items. And with no public, we'll move on. All right, consensus items is next up.
Not a whole lot on the schedule today. We do have one retirement for the end of the year. So Mark Johnston joined us to teach criminal justice in 2014. Mark came to us as a retired DNR officer, and he had done that his entire career in this region. And so he has been here for just over 10 years, 11 years. I can tell you that all the kids who take his course love Mark. They all refer to him as kind of their second grandpa or third grandpa, whatever the case is. He's very much a mentor and really works with kids to try to make good choices and be a good civil servant. So we are going to miss him. But do wish him luck on his second retirement. Hopefully he gets to be retired this time. So that's really the only one I wanted to go over.
Okay.
I guess I will stop. Even though this isn't a consensus item, I did want to take a moment just as a staff note and just say that all of our thoughts and prayers have been with the Fred Kunkel family. Fred is one of our bus drivers. Tragically lost his son unexpectedly last week while on a business trip, and we have his 3 children here, and so we certainly want to make sure Fred knows, and his family and his daughter-in-law, that all of them are in our thoughts and prayers.
Okay. Any other questions, comments on consensus items or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Joe, second by Wiley. Motion by Joe, second by Wiley to approve the consensus items as presented. All those in favor and ask by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approved 6-0. Next up, we have a program update.
Hi, Christy. Christy's here from our middle school.
Thanks so much for inviting me in today. Just wanted to give some brief updates and some numbers. So wrapping up year 2, and I have loved every minute of being at the middle school. This year has gone so much faster than last year. I feel like we're flying through this, and I know after spring break when we come back, it'll be so much faster still. So we're in the process right now of scheduling for classes for the middle school kids right now, but some programming updates with some adjustments with staff and some of the new pathway information at the high school. We are going to be bringing PCC down into the middle school level for high school credit, so our 8th graders will be taking PCC for high school credit next year. They actually started that this year at the end of first semester, and then this second semester, they've started that, like each section has started that. So we have had a teacher offer to take one of her sections of social studies and turn that into PCC, so her class size will be bigger, but she's really excited about bringing PCC into the classroom, which then opens up our PE sections for an extra section of PE. So we're excited. Our teachers have been super flexible and willing to work with us. We're going to continue exploring music this year. We are starting a creative dramatics class for next year, which, if anybody knows, the middle school used to have video news and announcements in the morning. This creative dramatics class will kind of be reinventing video news and announcements. So we're excited about that and excited to see where that will go. Gives the students just an extra elective class that they can participate in. Family and Consumer Sciences will be coming back down to the middle school level for our 6th and 7th graders. We are borrowing the high school Family and Consumer Science teacher for a couple of sections each semester. So we are super excited to have that, focusing on just those daily life skills that the kids are just not real strong in 6th and 7th grade. So We also are partnering with Bring Change to Mind this school year. We just started that, which was highlighted by the Indiana Department of Education in a recent programming update. And Bring Change to Mind is essentially a program that brings mental health awareness to the students in the school and tries to change that stigma of mental health. So talking just about mental health services and not stigmatizing kids if they are having any of those concerns. So again, we're just starting that. Mrs. Vanderkolk and myself are the advisors for that. And we have a state partner that will come in and start running that program. She'll come in about twice a year to do like a kickoff every year and then a wrap up in the spring. So we are super excited to bring that into the school just to help get that word out to kids. Along with that, we also, through Drug Free Adams County, started the Kids Against Alcohol and Drugs group at the middle school level. They're also going to be working with the high school level, just bringing drug and alcohol awareness to the students. So if you're familiar with SAD, Students Against Destructive Decisions, this is similar to that. Down at the middle school level, we have two of our 8th grade teachers, Stacy Kroll and Sharice Bowen, that are leading that. So their first big kickoff event is Dress Up Days next week, with messages about drug and alcohol abuse and staying away from drugs and alcohol and making healthy decisions. So each day comes with a theme that we'll be putting out to kids, and they'll have a message in the morning on announcements about just making healthy decisions with their life. The Adams County Health Department partnered with us to give us, help us get some new and updated equipment in our weight room. And the gym teachers are super excited about that we've been able to update some of that, along with fundraiser money that we had last year. We were able to buy dodgeballs, hockey sticks, pickleball set for the kids. So we're expanding our offerings in our PE classes as well. So we were super thankful that they partnered with us in that. And then we're just wrapping up our fundraiser for this school year, and we are looking to use those funds for field trip expenses, and again to like fund our PBIS rewards for our kids, and allowing us to offer some fun activities for the kids to participate in. Next week is our Braves Day, and we're doing a scavenger hunt and dodgeball tournament, so that money that we raise helps give prizes for those things. Buy the dodgeballs, because you can't imagine how fast we go through those when we have dodgeball tournaments, and every Friday the kids can pick to go down and participate in dodgeball for reward time that I'll get to in just a couple minutes. And so the PE teachers are like, we need more dodgeballs, constantly need more dodgeballs, because we're going through them so fast. So that fundraiser really helps us be able to fund that program and continue to allow us to reward our students. With our fundraiser, we also have a Day of Awesome coming in the middle of May, which the kids can participate in. They bring inflatables out, and the kids can play games and just hang out for an hour. We're also going to have Kona Ice this year for that event, so I'm super excited. The kids seem really excited about that as well. So those are all the fun things. And now I just wanted to talk about like the great things that we're doing in terms of our academics at the middle school and our test scores. So starting with, this is the couple pages that I gave you. Starting with the iLearn checkpoints, we did pilot the new checkpoint test this year. So the students will participate in 3 smaller checkpoints and then 1 larger test at the end of the year. Which is a little bit different than what we've done in the past with just that 1 test at the end. So this is just checkpoint information for checkpoint. What you see in the front is just checkpoint 2. So they took this in December, and you can see the state average is on the top line, and the bottom average is our district. So you can see our 6th grade language arts students knocked it out of the park. With being 14% above state average for NWEA. And then also our 7th grade language arts was above state average, and our 8th grade language arts was very close to state average. Then also on iLearn Checkpoint 2 for math, 6th grade was a little bit below state average. There is a big difference coming from 5th grade, transitioning into 6th grade math. So I expect that number to go up when we're just finishing Checkpoint 3 on Thursday for math, so I expect these numbers to go up. But then you can see both 7th and 8th grade also knocked it out of the park compared to state averages there. So again, that was a checkpoint taken in December. We're just completing our Checkpoint 3, so I don't have that information yet. We're not quite done with it. And then on the back of that page, it just shows a bigger breakdown of where our students are at in terms of, on the left-hand side, you'll see Checkpoint 1 and Checkpoint 2 data. And it's broken down, like when we get our reports back, we can see our students are, if they're in the red, they're below proficiency. If they're in yellow, they're approaching proficiency. Green is at proficiency, and then blue is above proficiency. So it just kind of gives you a breakdown of each grade level and then where they're at. The top line of those numbers is the state average, and then the bottom line is the district average. If we take a look at the bottom of that where it says average score, if you notice the top line is the state average and the bottom line is our district average. And we were above or right at state average for our checkpoint in language arts for Checkpoint 1. And Checkpoint 2 for language arts, again, we were either above or right at state average. And then the math score is the same. Checkpoint 1 is on top and Checkpoint 2 is on bottom, so you can look through that information. Once we got the checkpoint information as well as our NWEA information, in the fall, we started to do some remediation targeted on their deficits. So we took the information that we got from our checkpoints, and teachers started to build IXL remediation plans based on what they're going to be looking at coming up in the next checkpoint, but also looking at the NWA scores and their skill deficits. So we really started to look at each week the students were asked to complete 2 IXL lessons, which IXL is a remediation program and a learning tool that we use. But the students were asked to complete 2 IXL lessons at 80% accuracy, and then if they did that, then they could earn their reward time on Fridays during their SRT period. And that has been going very well. I do accredit that, the growth to that remediation time. Our teachers are being very intentional. In fact, our 7th and 8th grade started really meeting with the kids then too, and doing remediation outside of the IXL lessons too. So they're really focusing on making sure our students are gaining in those skill deficits. And then with IXL, again, we're continuing to move forward with our skill plans. There is an option within that to have our students work on skill plans based on their iLearn scores. So we are looking at using that for next school year, doing this similar thing with remediation. We are also, our high ability students are getting pulled out 1 day a week for enrichment programs. So that can be art, language arts, and math activities, so STEM activities. The first 9 weeks they built an amusement park with Connects. Second 9 weeks they were able to build hovercraft. So we will have one of those on display at parent-teacher conferences tomorrow night, so parents can kind of see the fun stuff. And then they'll also participate with our art teacher in enrichment programs. So again, our teachers are doing great things for our kids. Second page just shows you the growth from fall to winter in NWA. We have not taken our spring test yet. And the section that I really like to look at is the top is that same breakdown, red, orange, yellow, green, and blue. But you can see in the winter we grew in our scores in those sections. So we gained some students in each of those. So approaching proficiency and at proficiency, we gained students. This first page is for math. And then on the back side of that is language arts, comparing the fall scores to the winter scores. Some highlights from NWEA, and we found that for right now, NWEA kind of narrows down our focus a little bit more than the current iLearn. So we really looked at that data and skill deficits and strengths as well. But just some highlights from that. In the winter, when we were done with NWEA, we found that in 6th grade, there were only 10 students in language arts that didn't meet their their language arts growth goal. And there were only 5 students in math that didn't meet their growth goal for NWEA. So to meet growth goal, NWEA predicts like how many points you should grow between fall and winter. So out of those 10 and 5, some of them were already at or above grade level proficiency when they took the exam. So it automatically said, no, you didn't reach your growth goal, which they were already at grade level. So they didn't need to grow at that point. So, and then 7th grade, we had 20 students in language arts not meet their growth goal. Out of those 20, 11 students were already at grade level. So 76% of them grew. In math, 22 students did not grow, but out of those 22, 13 were already at or above grade level. 8th grade, 23 did not grow. 13 of them were already at or above grade level in language arts. And then math, 24 did not grow, but 14 of those were already at or above grade level. So we have a lot of students who made a great growth from fall to winter. And we did a reward for students who did grow in that, either language arts or math. And we only had 12 students that didn't grow in both of those. And when we broke that down, some of them grew by 1 or 2 points. They just didn't meet their growth goal. So we had very few. We only had about 3 students that didn't meet their growth goal when we looked at, were they at grade level when they started? Okay, so I was really very impressed with the work that our teachers put in for this. We had phenomenal results so far. So I'm interested to see what checkpoint 3 data looks like, and then also our end of year exam. And we're going to continue our work on just making our students well-rounded individuals. I think including that family and consumer science class helps pick up that daily living that we were looking for. So we're going to continue just supporting our students as a whole person and making sure that they're growing as individuals and they're reaching success, whatever that looks like for them. That's it. That's all I have.
That's awesome.
I know that was a lot. Sorry, it was a lot of numbers, but I get really excited when I look at data and see the kids' growth, and they're doing just so awesome. We have a great group of kids who are really trying and really pushing themselves to be just great students.
I love the classes that they're starting to offer, the new ones coming into. That's really cool, giving them more of a variety and see what they want to focus on as they go on in their education. Checkpoint 3, that comes out when?
So language arts we did today, actually. So the information we would have, but not all of our kids are tested.
Okay.
And then checkpoint 3 for math, we're doing on Thursday. So information will be pretty much immediate. It'll just be catching those kids that we need to catch for makeup tests who might not be there. So by end of week, we should have checkpoint 3 data at least started for a lot of them.
And the window is open for a while yet.
Yeah.
So we'll have our state comparison once that window closes.
Yeah, I think it's
It really takes it a little bit differently because the windows are really, really long for each of the checkpoints.
Yeah, so we'll have our district data, but we won't be able to compare it with the state because those
Sure.
will change through the end of the exam.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when is our summative assessment? Because they still have the big test at the end.
The 14th, the window opens, and then we spread it out for the kids because it is
Yeah.
actually in theater.
And I think we're set to start closer to the middle of May. I think the 7th, 9th, somewhere around there.
What are your thoughts on these checkpoints? Because this is kind of the first year we've gone through this. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I actually have found like they're pretty short tests that have gone relatively well. The students don't get burned out with the tests because they're short. Within 45 minutes, most kids are done. In fact, it's usually about 20 to 25 minutes, so it's a relatively fast test. It's very easy for the teachers to proctor. Doesn't take a lot of, it's all done online. So the biggest thing is trying to schedule for our testing coordinator to try to schedule every grade band in there and get everything aligned so he can do everything. But so far, it's been a relatively easy test. In talking to some of when we went to the iLearn Summit, they realized like for the checkpoints, some of the checkpoints have the kids reading 3 or 4 passages and then only answering like 2 questions on the passage. And that's a lot for some of our kids to read and then answer. The state has recognized that and they're working on less passages but more questions per passage. And I think that will be beneficial for our students, especially some of our struggling students who it just takes a long time to get through an entire passage.
And 2 questions really skews the outcome.
Right.
You miss something and
Right.
your score is
Yeah.
low on
We
that.
are a little disappointed in the, I don't want to say quality of data, but the way it comes back to us. So it comes back like this subsection analyzing the article. They're below proficiency, what does it say?
Performance varies.
Performance varies. So it essentially means like, yep, they've answered some right, they've answered some wrong, but it doesn't really break down specifically what skill they're struggling in that, because that could incorporate like 3 standards. So it doesn't really narrow it down on what specific skill the student is struggling on. So that's been a little bit frustrating. But it does at least narrow it down to, we know that these 3 standards, like at some point, the student is struggling in this area. So now we've started to look at that data and say, okay, we need to focus on how we're asking our questions so that it matches what they're being asked on these state tests. So naturally as a teacher, like we ask them this question, but then if they don't understand, we want to modify how we're talking to them. And so we're really working on, we're going to incorporate this language and this vocabulary in all of our questioning, and then we can modify and we can restate and we can reframe a question, but so the kids are understanding that vocabulary. So that's kind of what we've been focusing on for the last 5-6 weeks in our professional development time, is really looking at how are they asking the questions so that we can prepare our students to answer those questions the way they're being asked.
Makes sense.
Really good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Good? Okay. No old business, so we will move on to new business, with the first items being the approval of the boys volleyball as a spring sport at Belmont High School.
So this is something that Erin and I sent you folks some information to, have been going back and forth on. So men's volleyball, IHSAA did approve it, along with girls flag football. And we think lacrosse is coming down the line here soon as a new sport. We're kind of in that spot with our enrollment that you want, and that's one of our goals, is to get all our kids, as many as possible, engaged in some activity at school, because I think that just helps keep them in a structured activity, fosters school spirit and school culture, helps keep them, again, eye on the prize, learning some grit and resiliency. But at the same time, we are concerned about what impact will that have on our current programs. So I guess it came to kind of a compromise where we said, why don't we give it a trial run, and we'll keep good data as we go along. So the positives to adding another sport, like I just said, is I want as many of our kids as possible to be involved in something here at school. We did, the coach candidate did have a call-out meeting earlier this early winter, and he did have about 10 serious athletes come out for it. Several of them were a spring sport athlete already, whether it's baseball or track. But again, enough to run a team. We are part of the NE8, and every one of the other schools is already adding this, has added this, and then no one else in our county is going to have it at this time, however. Some concerns, like I said, is impact on other sports participation. We don't want to add a new sport and then to the detriment of something we already have going. So again, what we're going to do in the process is kind of collect data on the number of boys participating, especially here in these first few years. What other sports have they participated in historically? Are we just drawing off the rob from Peter to pay Paul? Is it just the same group of athletes that are just shifting in different places, or are we pulling in new athletes? I'm going to also do some surveying of coaches and athletes, because there's also some real and perceived conflicts about gym time, practice time, resources. Some of the things that involve a new sport, as you saw in the proposal, are paid for by the district. Other things are paid for by athletics, so it is another expense. Not exorbitant at this time, but it is another expense to have to fundraise for potentially, or to try to rely on what may or may not be strong gate numbers for admissions. I did talk to ISBA legal counsel Lisa Tanzel about Title IX, and a lot of folks don't understand. They think that boys and girls have to have the same compensation, same pay, same resources. While that is true in essence, it means that everything else has to be the same. So right now, our boys volleyball season for this spring would only have 12 events, versus our girls volleyball right now has 24 events, and that's both with no postseason play. So it's only about half the number of events. Presently, Aaron doesn't have a lot of expectations as far as summer work. If that would change, again, that might change what our compensation would be. So we are paying more similar to what some of our other sports in spring would be as our initial, since it is a startup program. So the final recommendation we're making is, let's give this a good 3-year probationary status, measure the impact on participation in the boys volleyball team, as well as impact on other spring sports participation. Look at how the program in the area is growing or not. Because again, what are other schools seeing? Are they seeing a growth in that, or are we just not getting the backing in this area? And then we'll report to you folks at the end of 3 years and reevaluate as far as, is this something we want to add as a permanent option, or do we really need to just revert back to focusing on our existing spring sports? Any questions on that?
I think it's evident that there's been a lot of thought and study and conversation going on here.
Yeah,
which-
it has. It was hard to come to some conclusions, so maybe this is more just kind of taking the, I don't want to say the easy way out, but I want the kids, and so does Aaron. Aaron's very committed to, if my kids, if our athletes want it and they want that opportunity, we want them to have it. But at the same time, we want to make sure we can keep strong programs too.
Could we maybe ask that there be a preliminary report out at the end of each season as
Sure.
well?
That would be no problem.
Yeah, I think how it's set up, I think it's been done well, but maybe a preliminary report of each season.
Absolutely. I think that's more than fair, and I also know that it's also easier to pull data as you're going and try to go back 3 years and
Yeah,
find it.
right. That'll just
Well
help at the end of the
received, yeah.
third year.
I thought what you and Aaron sent out was really comprehensive and really looked at every angle, which was, that looked great.
Any other thoughts or comments or questions, or a motion to approve the addition?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Wiley, seconded by Joel, to approve the boys volleyball as a spring sport at Belmont. All those in favor, announce by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approved 6-0. Next is the approval of course additions and changes.
Well, there was kind of a sub-point in that boys volleyball.
With the coaches?
Yes, so
Okay,
I was waiting to see what your thoughts were on the addition of the sport. So since you've okayed it, and we're at spring, we would also need to recommend that you approve Craig Kroll as head coach and Julie McConnell as
Okay.
assistant coach for this initial boys volleyball.
Sure.
okay,
I'll make that motion.
okay.
I'll
Motion by
second that
Wiley,
also.
second by Joel.
Thank you.
To approve the coaches as presented. All those in favor, announce by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approved 6-0. Okay, now we will move on to course additions and changes.
So you folks have to approve any additions or deletions really from our course guide, including when the DOE might make course title changes or number changes. So you heard from Christy that the middle school is offering several new electives, and that's mostly what you have on here. They are going to be adding some family and consumer science. Home ec is what it used to be called. PCC, which is preparing for college and careers, that's been a 9th grade offering here. With the new high school redesign, we are needing to push that back to 8th grade, and they've been pushing us to do that for the last couple years. We've kind of held on to 9th grade, but now it's kind of we need to do this to keep kids kind of on track to continue their graduation pathways with the new high school redesign. And just as a note, we also, I think Christy also and Tiffany worked with our local parochials, and they are adding that, all of them too, so that those kids come in with those courses as well. The dramatics course, exploring music and computer science, I think is a new one that we're offering as well. Do you want to talk about the computer science one? Because high school has a new, now is entering the age of, we have a requirement to offer computer science in high school, a very specific course. So I'm excited to see middle school is going to give a precursor to that.
Yeah, so the high school, the teacher that's doing the high school computer science class will offer one section of computer science for our 8th grade students. What that specifically looks like is to be determined at this point in time.
She's attending some PD this summer, and they have curriculum. We've heard great things about the training she's going to from several different districts who are looking into this and have worked with the company already.
So again, it's a very specific class that counts for the now what's going to be a high school requirement, graduation requirement for incoming freshmen. So this will, again, just help give those students a preview. The focus on this upcoming one, I believe, is more coding that's in high school. So trying to give them a preview of coding, which is a different way of thinking for a lot of kids. It's not just doing Word or PowerPoint computer applications. It is learning to write computer language, which is a whole different world. Some kids will love it and navigate to it. It's a great exposure to another hugely growing career opportunity for kids. So I'm glad to see that we're able to fit that in the schedule to give some of those kids a preview who may really, really thrive in that type of thinking.
Yeah, and it kind of is supporting, so Andrew Whirling, who taught our innovative design class last year, had 2 sections each semester. Because his program is growing at the high school, we lost him for one period. So this kind of helps with that too. He did a lot of the CAD programming with the 8th graders and 3D printing and a little bit of engineering and kind of all those precursors to Project Lead the Way in high school. So this will help like support that as well. So it gives those kids who are interested in that area some experience as well.
So for Christy's programs with the electives, it is often we're sharing a lot of high school. So lots of times it happens, whatever new course graduation changes, course numbers for different things. We're trying to get a situation built where it can be more consistent so that there is some, I guess, continuity of building interest and building pathways for some of those kids. We can. But that's it. So those are the middle school courses. You'll have one probably next month from the high school of the new course additions there, and that's where most of the name changes happen. especially in CTE, because that's under the Department of Workforce Development, and they shift things up every year a little bit.
Any other comments or questions or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the courses as submitted.
Motion by Wiley, is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Wiley, seconded by Darlene to approve the course additions and changes as presented. All those in favor announce by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approved 6-0. Next up is the approval of HB 103 flexibility waiver application.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
So this will be our fifth year, for applying for this. The state 5 years ago allowed schools to apply for waivers of different legal code, and one of those is minimum number of school days. So the minimum number of school days is 180 days. There's some minutes minimally attached to each of those, which we're more than over across the district. Really, if they measured the year in minutes, we wouldn't have to even apply for this, but because they measure it in days, we have to. So we've only asked for 3 the last 4 years. We're going to ask for 4 waiver days, and the reason being we are going to be implementing a brand new ELA curriculum in the elementary next year to support science of reading based on new state law. So that's going to be a heavy lift. We are in our first year of the new iLearn and with the checkpoints, and we discussed how it would be really helpful if we had time built into our schedule that we could review those checkpoint data after every checkpoint, talk about interventions in kids and build those individual learning plans for some of those kids, and then again another time before the summative assessment, as well as next year planning and summer school planning when we look at some of those things. High school's got the high school redesign, which again, it got pulled back a little bit from what the original plan was, but there's still going to be a lot of changes happening in the next couple of years for that, and trying to build community partnership to allow more work-based learning opportunities, and again, just focusing on our data and making sure kids are in the pathway they need to be in. Middle school as well. We're also looking at still in early planning stages, but we're anticipating trying to make some big gains in our math preparation in elementary next year. We have been doing a lot of work on literacy and reading, which is needed and it's wonderful, but we also have to do something to get us further than we are right now. Teachers have been working hard, but really when they're trying to work on new curriculum, scope and sequence documents, and training for new curriculum, it's not going to leave a lot of time for them individually to do math. So Tiffany and I have been working on trying to come up with some other ideas that we can help try to get them, I don't want to say a plug and play curriculum, it won't be that, but work on getting a lot of the legwork done, so then we can just focus on instruction and the data analysis that they already understand through what Renee's been doing with literacy. But we needed to do something to accelerate that process because the state keeps moving the target. So, and I think we're going to see upcoming, the state has new legislation that was passed last time. We just haven't seen what it's going to look like of focusing on math instruction in elementary and middle school. So we're trying to get ahead of that. And
It's also
hopefully,
being focused in higher ed.
are they? What's that looking like?
We don't know yet.
Oh, you think it's going to go back to the qualifying exams or something?
Could be.
Yeah. Well, as a former math teacher, I'm all about the math. So bring it on. So anyway, for this, we are asking for a waiver of the 180 days and have 176 in person. The 4 that would not be happening would be just staff PD days, no e-learning required for students. Again, by minutes, we're still over the state requirement on minutes in 1 to 6 and or K to 6 and 7 to 12. We're over all the minute requirements anyway. So we're still giving a lot more instructional minutes than some schools may be.
Okay. Any questions or comments or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Dave, is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Wiley. Motion by Dave, seconded by Wiley to approve, for approval of HB 1003 flexibility waiver application. All those in favor announce by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approved 6-0. And we have several donations.
We do. Again, very thankful for our generous community. Would you prefer that I go through them singularly or just look at them all collectively?
Together.
Together? Somebody's in taxi. Poor thing, I could not do it. Okay, so the Rev Group has donated $1,500 toward BHS baseball for continuance of the field renovation. We're getting close to getting everything done, but they're working on some things around the power poles out there. Krugerberg Auction and Realty has donated $1,500 each to girls soccer and girls softball. And our local VFW chapter is donating $750 each to the middle school and elementary for our PBIS incentives.
It's awesome.
It's
It
really
is.
nice.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Any other questions, comments, or motion to approve the donations?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Okay, motion by Darlene, is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Jill. Motion by Darlene, seconded by Jill to approve the donations as presented. All those in favor announce by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approved 6-0. Next up is the superintendent's report.
So I can't believe we're really at this point where, again, it really is about preparing for next year already. It doesn't, I don't even know how March got here and we're already midway almost. So until early April, we are continuing to have summer school and BEST sign-up options for students. So BEST, remember, is our daycare option. We are offering summer hours for parents who may need it. iRead scores will have returned, and they are starting to be shared with families. Tiffany, I'll let you update. I know things are embargoed still as far as not being able to announce, but we are happy.
That is what I will definitely echo that.
And big shout out to our title teachers, second grade and third grade. Well, of course, everyone plays into it, but those folks have been feeling the pinch. Again, if you remember, this is the first year that potential retention is required in third grade for students who don't pass the iRead by the end of summer. So they are all working really hard to try to get as many kids over that mark as possible. And then putting in their blood, sweat, and tears. And we're still working, and we have just a few more kids to try to get over that mark, and we're still going to keep working until the very last second on that one. March 12th, tomorrow, is parent-teacher conferences for the elementary and middle school. March 18th is going to be kindergarten roundup, and I think they've already sent out something with a QR code on it that you can do some preliminary information. Same thing with preschool roundup. It's going to be April 29th. The reason preschool roundup is late, again, we sent out an early interest survey, but we want parents to be able at preschool roundup to sign up for On My Way pre-K vouchers or CCDF vouchers, because the representative will be there, and that portal doesn't open until later in April. So it just makes things a lot more seamless for those parents to be able to do it all with the help of somebody there. And then June 2nd to the 27th is when we are offering summer school. And again, waiting to see what signups look like, to see what we need to offer exactly. Certainly will be reading intervention for those kids who have scored at risk of not passing in second grade and third grade. Is second grade a mandatory intervention in summer, or is that just third grade? I need to
We
clarify
really would like
myself.
any student who's at risk to be there. And we had iRead parent meetings in February, I believe, with all of second grade parents and third grade parents, to let them know just the expectation with passing and what our pathways would look like. But we're very excited to continue helping support those kiddos who scored at risk and who did not pass. We already, within a day, are changing our intervention groups to make sure we're hitting those kids both in the classroom and that they are meeting with some additional interventionists. So.
High school had their Hunger Games. I don't even know what number this is anymore. Friday, it's always a lot of fun for the kids. I know Jill was able to pop in. I don't know if you have any.
So fun. I just, the energy
I
is
see it in
really
the
cool.
pictures.
Yeah, I know.
Well, she might have to do the dance off next week. Won't show up. Well, I think the teachers won the lip sync, so there you go.
Yeah, it was really, really fun.
It's a good time with the kids, and
I thought one of the teachers said year 10.
I think so. It
Right?
started when I was principal, early sometime in there, and I don't know how many kids still know the reference to the Hunger Games. That movie's old by now. But they still have a fun time, and it's just a good school spirit day and a time just to kind of let loose and remind them that school can be fun too, and it's not all work, work, work. You need to remember to play after you work hard too.
Very cool.
I think that's all I have at this time.
Okay. Any other matters come before the board? Board member public comment?
I distributed some highlights of legislation. The first one that on that list, Senate Bill 287, this impacts school board members and those that are interested in being school board members, in making it where you would declare a party. Those bulleted items would be reasons why this is not supportive of good education for students. That second bullet item, that's a unique one in mandating partisan election. I don't think it would necessarily impact us right now here, but there are school districts in southern Indiana that are there around the ammunitions, that big military base where many people are employed by them. That means these past school board members would not be able to run because of that. So that would be extremely impactful. Of course, Senate Bill 1, property tax relief. It was Ways and Means Committee this last Wednesday did take testimony. A positive is that they didn't take a vote in that possibility of amendments to that, and we would hope those amendments would be favorable for our local government and school districts. So that just kind of highlights that. But also Senate Bill 1 does talk about school referendums, and it limits some of the flexibility that we currently have, and that highlights that. Senate Bill 518, this you're not hearing, I don't think, a lot about, but this is favoring increasing revenue for charter schools. Locally, we really don't have charter schools at this point, but it would, school districts in certain cases would need to share property tax with these charter schools. I included here closure of U.S. Department of Education. I took some statements from the new director there, Linda McMahon. We heard something end of last week where the president was really talking about eliminating the U.S. Department of Education. We haven't heard anything this week. Of course, we've been hearing a lot about tariffs. But she's made some statements of what she sees the department focusing on here, the Title I money, Pell Grants, public service loan forgiveness. She did suggest that disability rights laws may be better suited in the Health and Human Services Department. So those are some things just to take note of. They are, I read something today too where they're saying, well, Congress would be the only one that could eliminate Department of Ed. We'll see. The next, that Chalkbeat, Indiana, this came today, interesting, and one of the reasons I pulled it is because of the interest we could have with virtual public schools. That it's apparently there may be some huge increases in that direction, which would also mean less increase for face-to-face public schools. And then the last one there is the HB 1500, the teacher grant that we've had the last couple of years, where it's going to be changing the process where it becomes a competitive grant, but it's also changing the structure of current teacher evaluations. In some ways, it's leaving it more up to school districts on how the regular evaluation process, and eliminating those categories that we've had in the past. And then these categories would be what you would apply for a teacher grant. The sticky point with this is you get the grant for a teacher and they've got up to $10,000 depending on what category they're in. The state will offer that money 2 years, and after that, you have to, as a district, continue paying that
Oh, wow.
as their base, on their
Wow.
base.
Which I can tell you, the conversation among superintendents is none of us will apply for it
Yeah.
because we couldn't
You
add it to
couldn't
base.
sustain it.
Yeah.
So we think that this is really a bait and switch move to say, well, we offered you an ability to increase teacher salary, you didn't use it, so now we're going to give it to charters. That's what we
Yeah.
Yeah.
it really is.
And I would concur
Yeah.
with that. I did hear Banning talking about it, or not Banning,
Amy?
Baney, yeah. He was involved in the original change in teacher evaluation. It didn't work, he said, the way he wanted it to. So that's why he's come up with this idea.
I assume he's wanting to see more discernment in
He is.
evaluations.
He did give numbers. He said 57% of teachers right now are highly effective, 36% effective. And he said, he's wanting to see, actually, he said a bell curve.
In a teacher shortage time?
But those were words he said.
Yeah.
I am not surprised. I also gave you a handout. I'll go through it a little bit with you. This is Michelle Clauser, the superintendent, Penrod, the superintendent at South Adams, and myself met with our county council today, and commissioners, excuse me, just to kind of give them an idea of what some of this proposed legislation, how it may impact our individual school systems. And because all local government right now stands to lose a lot of money under the current law. So I wanted them to understand what that might mean, kind of go over some of the things that might not be very clear and transparent. So some of this was to try to be an education piece, so I'm not going to go over all of it, but we started by talking about the different ways schools receive revenue. And then we dove into property taxes. So property taxes are what fund our operations and debt service. And there's two things right now that we are looking at as far as those two funds go with what's related to legislation. So in 2023, the last long session, we have House Enrolled Act 1499. And so if you remember, that was just after the year post-COVID that assessed valuation exploded. Here in Adams County, we've typically only had like 1.44% average growth in the previous 6 to 10 years before that. We had 10.5% that year. Again, record-breaking numbers that have never happened before and may never, we didn't think, happen again. We'll fast forward in 2 years, and they sort of kind of did. But what that means is whenever our assessed valuation goes up, likely the amount of, well, definitely the amount of money each of us individually are going to pay for property taxes. So all of us, and including our constituents, felt the pinch of dramatically increased property taxes, no doubt about it. And of course, people were talking about we need some property tax relief, and the legislators wanted to see property tax relief. So one of the things, really this 1499 accomplished 3 things. Number one, they increased the homestead deduction pretty significantly, which, okay, that's fine. That did decrease our levy. And then it also shifted some of that tax payment away from homeowners, residential taxes, to more business, probably agriculture, I would assume. The big thing that was going to impact schools the most, though, is this thing called maximum levy growth quotient, which basically caps by how much schools in particular can increase their property taxes in any given year. Most of the time for us, it'd been around 4 to 6%. We were looking at 5% in '23. It was looking like it was going to come up to be about 5% again in '24. Well, the legislature wanted to decrease the maximum amount that schools could levy, local tax entities could levy. So they capped it at 4% maximum growth for '24 and '25. So we're in that time. So this is sunsetting. So they needed to do something. And again, they wanted to cap it at 4% forever. Schools lobbied really hard to say that's not fair. It's not our fault that AV did what it did. This usually system works. You know, usually as things go up, other things go down, and it waxes and wanes over historical times. Unfortunately, with, again, the post-COVID economy did some things that have never happened before and hopefully may not happen again. But they wanted some relief and some promise to taxpayers that we're going to decrease this a little bit over the next 2 years. With it sunsetting, they also are addressing that piece in Senate Bill 1, which is the budget bill. So instead of capping it at 4% or something along the lines of what we were talking 2 years ago, the new proposal that came with the revision of Senate Bill 1 was that you'll get 0% growth in 25, or 26, excuse me, 1% growth maximum in 27, and 2% growth maximum in 28. So not only were we already losing money because it was being capped at 4%, now they're going to say, you can't grow it. Well, I don't know about your homes, and you're going to see this here in a moment. Inflation has been no joke for any of us on goods and services. We still have people we have to pay who expect a raise of some sort for cost of living. And then as you're going to see here in a moment, there's other ways and means that we have had property tax money diverted from what we're able to levy. And so again, these are kind of layered cuts. It's not just one cut, they're layered cuts. So the accumulation of those cuts becomes extremely significant to us in the long run. So if we move on, this shows you North Adams projection from Senate Bill 1. So in the blue group of boxes, you see kind of what our maximum levy would be based on the 2023 House Enrolled Act 1499 with the, prior to House Enrolled Act 1499 with no maximum growth levy quotient cap. And the middle column in that blue shows you what our increased funds should be. The orange cells are with the 2023 1499 with a 4% cap. So you can kind of compare left to right what happens to the amount of money we're able to levy with the different growth quotient. So it dropped from what we probably would have been anticipating, because it's a formula. Historically, maximum growth levy quotient had been a formula, versus what we were not able to levy. The green boxes show what it would look like if Senate Bill 1 went through, with the 0% growth in 26, 1% in 27, and 2% in 28. Long story short, over that 5-year span, North Adams would lose almost $2.6 million in property taxes. So our certified levy right now is only 6.1 maximum, not certified. Our maximum levy is 6.1 million. Imagine losing 2.6 of that. That's 46% of what our levy should be right now. That's significant. If you look on the next page, I put together some key points of what things cost out of operations. So the personnel we pay for out of operations are the people that work in this office, including me. Bus drivers, bus paras, custodians, groundskeepers, our operations manager, maintenance staff. So a little over $2 million of that is in salaries of all those people. So again, keep in mind how much they're saying we'd lose, and $2.1 million of that's salaries for people just to stay at the level they are presently with no raise. Our IT services and maintenance, and again in operations, that's more our infrastructure network, making sure we have Wi-Fi, making sure we have cable, all those things, is about $500,000. Utilities, almost $800,000, and that's up 11% from 4 years ago because utilities skyrocketed, especially gas and electric. Our property and liability insurance has gone up 46% from 2021. That's because of all the high wind events in Indiana. And so they're just anticipating that there are going to be wind events, and they are basically taking their money in the front end because they anticipate they're going to have to spend it in the back end. So we're about at $250,000 there. For capital projects, and again, keep in mind this is what we use to renovate and build. We have been trying to back that down since we've been doing bonds to about $1 million, but typically about $1 million to $1.5 million in 1 year. That's not enough to accomplish all the things that a school system needs to do to keep its buildings just functioning. And I can tell you right now, our capital projects for the most part are about $600,000 to $800,000 a year in doing sections of roof. Roof is very expensive, and you pretty much, we'll get a 5-year break once we get the whole campus re-roofed before we have to start all over again, because you do it over that many years. And then brick tuck pointing is another $300,000, $400,000 a year, just to maintain brick structures that are a 1967 and a 1992 building. Bus replacement, we bought 2 white buses last year that were $236,000. We bought 2 white buses in 2021 that went up 80%. And fuel went up 75% almost to keep our buses on the road in just 4 years. So again, if we would have to find places to cut that much money, certainly we can look at trying to operate more leanly, and we've always taken a fairly frugal approach, but it would be impossible to cut that much without cutting services or cutting staff in that situation if that would go through. So it is something that all schools in Indiana, I can tell you, are very concerned right now about this. If you look at the next page, kind of just showed for our constituents, I think some of the narrative that's being told in the state is that schools in particular, because we account for the biggest portion of the state budget, and I think that's why sometimes the conversations center around us.
It's just under 50%.
Yeah. The words that are used is a lot of schools are doing these Taj Mahal builds, and it's really at the expense of taxpayers unnecessarily. But at the same time, when we talk to our local representatives, they're like, well, no one in Adams County is doing that. No, but these laws are blanketed for everyone. So showed the folks on county commissioners, just in case there were questions, our tax rate has not varied extensively across the year. Yeah, there's some fluctuation, but nothing exorbitant. And certainly the amount of money that folks feel they're paying, I think some folks are quoting that their taxes have gone up 20-some%. That's due to the AV growth, because again, if you have to pay 5% of $10 is different than 5% of $20. It's going to be more. When they say you're worth more, you pay more. But it's not because we've levied a higher tax rate. In fact, our strategy has been to keep our debt service neutral, and we're using tax cliffs as debt comes off to be able to fund a lot of our capital projects. Our operations fund is allowed to fluctuate based on what, again, the formula shows with AV. But it's not exorbitant. And then I also wanted to point out for us, this is another layered cut. Tax caps for North Adams are fairly extensive. In the last 3 years, we've had over 500,000, and they're approaching 570,000 per year from our certified levy that we are unable to collect. That's $500,000 off what we could collect, but because of the tax caps at 1% for residential, 2% for business, 3% for farmland, again, that is a fail-safe trigger for taxpayers that there is a limit on how much you're going to have to pay. So we lose that levy to protect the taxpayer. And again, we've learned to budget through that. That didn't happen until 2009, 2010. I think that went into the Indiana Constitution. But that's another cut that's not being discussed to the larger community that we have been budgeting for and compensating for years now. We shared with them kind of what our debt service projects were. None of them, again, are Taj Mahal type buildings. There were some questions in the community, we were told, from Matt Lehman about, so what did schools do with their ESSER dollars? Why didn't they use their ESSER dollars for some of these things? So we shared with them what we had used our ESSER dollars for. Here at North Adams, because a lot of the ESSER dollars were built around poverty index compared to our neighboring county schools, they received much more in ESSER dollars than we did because of the Amish population increasing their complexity index. Again, it just is, it's the formula. It is what it is.
A matter of fact.
It is, it just is. I don't feel like, I know some people bemoan it. I say, we got what we were supposed to get. They may have gotten more because of the formula, but we were never going to get more. We just got what we were supposed to. So anyway, we did do some capital project things, especially with ESSER 2 and ARC. We redid our drop-off pickup because there were safety issues in our community, and the city asked us to get people off Monroe Extended, so we redid that so that we no longer have any cars stacking on Monroe Extended, so that first responders can get in and get through. We did change out an air handler that was going bad. We've replaced the HVAC at the high school in one part of the building, and we added the Zoom Q software, which again wasn't a huge amount, but it did help keep traffic moving more, so again to keep people off the street. So that's our property tax story, and kind of what the untold story is about what's being discussed. I know Wiley talked about 518. I do want to talk about it for just a moment. Right now, the way 518 is written presently, it does not impact any Adams County schools. When it was first penned, however, it was about sharing your property tax dollars with every school that is in your geographic district, including privates, including, basically it's money follows the child. Right now, it only impacts 4 districts, the way the law is written. And this new law revision, I think part of what we were concerned about, we were told by one of our legislators whom we trust, and he said it in good intentions, don't worry about it, this law's not going to go anywhere, it'll be done. It came to the final vote, he told us it's going to drop. They revised it, came back for a vote, new language. Now it's a tiered proposal where if you, depending upon the number of students that you have that live in your district but attend a charter school, how much of your property tax levy you have to share with them. And again, charter schools can buy a building and property for $1 from public schools if you have a building or property that is underutilized. So they don't have to take on the debt. If we want to build a new school or buy property, we have to pay the market rate. They don't have to provide transportation. They have the ability to also private fundraise. They are privately funded in addition to state funded, whereas we don't necessarily get that because you don't get a tax write-off for donating money toward our education fund, for example. So there's a lot of things that are not necessarily, I think, straightforward. Our concern on 518 is if this goes through right now, it's another stepping stone of money follows the child in property tax, and we're just going to lose more and more when we're the ones having to provide food service, transportation, much larger facilities that are older and are taking a lot of money to maintain at this point. So then moving on to education, there's again, I'm sorry to keep belaboring, but I think this is important that you understand. So House Bill 1001 is the House version of education funding. And we knew there wasn't going to be a lot of extra money this year. We were prepared for that. One of the things that concerned us, and I think it concerns some of our representatives, was the narrative being told to the community is that schools are going to get anywhere from 0.5% to 2%, depending upon enrollment and things like that, in new monies. It's not going to be a lot, but you're getting a little new. Well, when we really dove into the language of the legislation, curricular materials fees, if you remember, this year is the first year we weren't allowed to charge families for curricular fees. That has been a separate reimbursement amount from the state. Again, we say this much money is what we charge folks or what we had to spend for folks, and they will reimburse us up to $159 a student. It's just a flat amount. That's not enough to cover everything. It covers elementary, comes nowhere near for middle school and high school because they did not include anything about one-to-one devices, which almost every school in Indiana is one-to-one now. What happened though, didn't get a lot of fanfare, is they rolled that amount into the foundation grant under this new writing. So it made it look like we were getting a 1% to 2% raise, but if you deduct what the curricular fee amount would be, most of us are You might be $15,000 to the good to having a loss. And so if you look at that last chart I provided you, it is showing us with losses on the bottom there in both 26 and 27 if you deduct the curricular fees from what our anticipated from this budget run, from this bill, would be. So we're hopeful and have been hearing we might get, I think we're going to get some movement on getting that curricular amount out, and where if there is new money, it's a true new money, and because otherwise, again, we're talking about some devastation. We are allowed to transfer up to 15% from our education fund to operations. We have really dialed that back in North Adams because we want that money in education to help compensate staff better. Some schools, if we do have the shortfall in property taxes, are going to have to dial that up. Unfortunately, if you look at ours, we could be facing a shortfall in education too. So that could be a double whammy. I am hopeful after Friday that I think we are getting through to I think some legislators are seeing this can't happen. It's going to be too devastating for local government entities and schools. So I'm hopeful that they're going to back the train up on that. But we still have a governor who has been very forthright in saying, I will veto any, like Senate Bill 1 that comes that isn't what I promised taxpayers, which was a reversion of property taxes back to pre-COVID. So we'll see where it ends up. Again, I'm hopeful after Friday, but it's important that I think our community understands these things aren't good for schools because it means staffing, it means services, it means quality, that your kids can be educated. I don't think anyone wants to sacrifice those things. The needs our students have are not going to go down. The types of things that we need to provide for kids are not going to decrease. And unfortunately, the cost of most things are increasing. So it is something that luckily we do have a very strong and organized lobbying system for several of schools here in Northeast Indiana banded together about 4 years ago, and that is a very organized and loud lobbying group. We have someone down at the State House every day in all of these meetings, and they are communicating with different members of that group, sometimes minute by minute. I do know that Representative Lehman and Senator Holdman are going to be at Lehman's Feeds Saturday morning or Thursday. Thursday they have I think it's Saturday.
Is it?
If anyone has questions for them. Again, they have been very responsive to our group, and I think they get it. I would just encourage folks not to attack them. They have been, I feel, very responsive and understand our concerns, but to just echo to them, please stand firm, please hold solid, please continue to advocate for our local communities. Any questions?
That's good information.
It's depressing a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, but it helps to understand, I think, and for people to hear it, it's important.
Yes.
The thing too with the property tax and how it's set up with assessed valuation, it's working the way legislators
Yes.
set it up to do.
It is
Now,
working.
they're not saying that today,
Right.
but it is
Yeah.
working the way they have orchestrated it.
The AV growth is the trigger, and again, we all understand as property owners, it's not
Yeah.
fun, but we also feel from what economists are telling us, this will work itself out if you give it a few years. This was a post-COVID, no one knew to anticipate this. And again, they put some stop gaps in there already. Let them do their job. Let them do their job.
Anything else? All right, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.